This is 2A Tonight. I'm Mark Halpern reporting from my room. Thank you all for joining. We're going to talk a lot about Matt Gaetz. We'll talk a little bit about Pete Hegseth. We'll talk about some of the fallout from the Matt Gaetz's decision in conjunction with President-elect Trump to withdraw his nomination from being Attorney General. I don't think he was actually formally nominated, but same idea. Thank you for joining. If you're here on YouTube, welcome. If you're new, this is a different kind of platform. We believe in peace, love, and understanding. There's no need to keep emailing me and asking me to cancel the chat. The chat's there for a reason. Do what I do. If you think the chat is garbage, don't read it. That goes also for the chat here on Two-Way. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, if you want to play in the chat, we prefer you be civil, but we know some of you are psychotic and can't help but put it in trash in the chat. Please don't do that. We prefer you not, but people will. So if you don't like the trash in the chat, just don't read it. I almost never read it. Sometimes I see things flash before me. But in any event, if you're here in the Two-Way platform, the good news is we'd love for you to ask a question, particularly if you've never asked a question before. Raise your hand. I'll call on you and you get a chance to participate in the platform. Very grateful to you for joining this evening. Tomorrow night, we're on at 5 Eastern, not 6. So if you feed your baby or let the dog out or harvest crops to the sound of the gun here, please, hour earlier tomorrow, 5 Eastern time. And I'll tell you why tomorrow, probably. Anyway, Matt Gaetz. I have said, many of you heard me say, the only thing harder than running against Donald Trump in an election is covering him as a journalist. And when I say that, I usually mean because how to cover someone who lies and who violates norms and who's cruel and inconsistent and unpredictable, how to do that fairly. So if he tells the same lie 10 days in a row, it's hard to cover it the 10th day with the same verve and emphasis as on day one. That's usually what I mean is he's difficult to cover, but he's also difficult for another reason, which is that you have to always be thinking, is Trump playing by the normal rules or playing by his own rules? Because he's often playing by his own rules. Case in point, nominating Matt Gaetz. Nominating Matt Gaetz is not playing by the normal rules. To have someone who many of his colleagues didn't even know was a lawyer to be Attorney General, with all his personal baggage, with all of his previous criticism of senators, with his reputation for being hard to get along with. No normal president-elect under any circumstances would nominate somebody like Matt Gaetz. And yet he did, right? So that's unconventional. And the reason why, I believe, I'll speak for Sean and Dan, who I don't believe are here. The reason why Sean and Dan and I thought that Pete Hegseth's nomination was more imperiled than Matt Gaetz, and that we all thought Gaetz had a good chance to survive, was we assumed that Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz would continue to play by their own rules, not by the normal rules. Because the normal rules would say you nominate someone and more senators of your own party whose votes you would need to confirm him say, we'll never vote for him. They wouldn't go forward. They'd say, are you sure? And they say, we're never going to vote for him. There's nothing you can say. We just thought that they would defy that and get to this committee and get the votes in the committee and then get the votes on the floor. We were wrong. I don't really like a culture of journalism and consumers of journalism who then just want to drag us and say, you guys are idiots, you don't know anything. We did our best. We relied on our sources and we relied on our experience to say what we thought. Sue us. Don't watch if you don't want to watch. But I don't feel that stupid about being wrong, because I thought they'd continue to play by Trump rules rather than conventional rules. What happened this morning was Donald Trump decided to play by conventional rules, because conventional rules say maybe he could be confirmed, but it doesn't seem like it, but you're going to burn a lot of political capital, right? Now, I think the most undercovered story of the transition is, what is the Trump operations attitude towards working with Democrats in the Senate? Okay? Leave the Republicans aside, because these confirmations are Republican-only affairs. Nobody's going to be confirmed by substituting Republican votes for Democratic votes. Some may get Democratic votes, like Marco Rubio. So it's not about confirmation, but it is about the legislative agenda. And next year, except for reconciliation, if Donald Trump wants to pass legislation through the Senate, he's going to need Democratic votes. Now, I think he could actually get Democratic votes for the tax bill, That's a story for another day. But if he wants to do other stuff that's not in reconciliation, he needs 7 Democrats to vote for it. And the Gaetz nomination was not going to help him with his relationship with Democrats. As Donald Trump would say, this I can tell you. So I'm not saying he withdrew it because of a master's plan to start working with Democrats, but I can tell you that there were a lot of political costs to continuing with this nomination. Now, what I think happened, and I don't know this from more than one source, and it's not a senator, it's a Senate aide, but my instinct says it's true, is it's those Venmo records, right? He paid young women cash, and he had sex, and there's reason to believe he had sex with them. Now, he can say all he wants they were gifts to girlfriends, but paying teenage girls as a sitting member of Congress through Venmo, cash money, I just think my gut is that Mitch McConnell, they said no, that guy's never going to get my vote. So Trump went conventional. If you can't get the votes, you don't. There are all these theories about, well, go forward with it and have him be the sacrificial lamb, and then you can get somebody else in as attorney general, and it takes the heat off of all the nominees. I maybe there's something to that, but the cost of going forward was high. And again, Sean and I, excuse me, and Dan thought high, but Trump is happy to pay the cost. If Gaetz failed at any point along the way, they'd find somebody else, and they just brush themselves off and go forward. Too high. For whatever reason, they thought it was too high. Now, what's Gaetz going to do next? Senator from Florida, take his House seat, go into the White House staff. I have no idea. Haven't had time to do any reporting on that, but people are interested in that, obviously. Who's going to be the next attorney general nominee? I've got my guesses on that based on some conversations with people, but I don't have anything I feel hard enough to talk about tonight. But I do think that there's if Trump's going to play by conventional rules, he's going to pick somebody who Republican senators say, close to what they'll say about Marco Rubio, which is great choice. And there are some people in Trump's orbit who would fit that mold. There's some other people who would not. So I'll be super curious to see which way he goes. There was going to be a hard time keeping lawyers at the Justice Department under Matt Gaetz. There are people Trump could pick who I think MAGA would be fine with, where that wouldn't be as big an issue. So we'll see about that. Now, excuse me, what does it mean for the other nominees? Some people say sacrificial lamb, Gaetz is done, everybody else is an easier chance. Other people say now these other nominees are going to get the scrutiny that Matt Gaetz is going to get, because the Gaetz story, as long as he was the nominee, underage sex, payments, prostitution, witnesses, testify, all that, release the report, not release the report, that was going to take up a lot of bandwidth. And for those who want us to talk about policy, we will, and we have, but we're talking about these nominations now because this is what's in the news, and I think where a lot of people's interests lay. But the policies matter, and we will have plenty of policy conversation. In any event, I think Pete Hegseth is still in trouble, and I think the scrutiny now goes to him. I want to put up a tweet that someone did to illustrate why I think he's also in trouble, and not just because of this one set of allegations. All right, this is a tweet. It's worth noting Hegseth's version of the story is a couple of months after his new wife had a baby. He went to a conservative political conference, got really drunk, hit on many women who found him revolting, had an argument with this woman, then had consensual sex with her. Now, the only part of that I don't know to be true based on public accounts is I'm not sure the woman was already his new wife. He was going to have a baby with her and marry her eventually, but I'm not sure by then it was his new wife. Otherwise, I believe that's factually correct. That doesn't speak well of him, and I wonder whether he'll have to address it. He's sticking to he was never charged. He had an agreement with the woman because he didn't want to have public accusations. But the point of this mostly or entirely accurate tweet is it's not a great series of events. And as I've said before, not casting aspersions on him, I believe this will not be the only personal accusation he faces. That's my sense from stories that I've heard. In addition, some senators are going to have concerns about you can take the tweet down, about his management record, et cetera, to do the job. I think he's got a pretty good chance to be confirmed now because of this. Gaetz is a sacrifice to the confirmation gods. And And because Republicans are circling the wagons around him much more than they did about Gaetz. Now, he has criticized Republican senators in the past, but not the same way Matt Gaetz did. Ads for Noam, Kennedy, and I always forget the fifth one. Help me out, Noah. Who's the fifth one? Noam, Tulsi Gabbard. As for those three, I think they're all on track to be confirmed today, but it will depend on how the hearings go, etc. Back to Gaetz, one more thing. We said this morning on the morning meeting, the facts will matter, right? That's what we said. We said if he's guilty as charged, and people think that, and again, my sense is that they felt from the Venmo records alone, he was guilty enough to say he's never going to be confirmed. Okay. Give me one moment. All right. Treasury. There's a feeling that Donald Trump is not happy with the finalists. It doesn't mean he's not going to pick one of the finalists, but I have been strongly led to believe, as you heard me say last night, if you were here, that he was going to pick somebody last night or pick somebody this morning, and he hasn't announced anything yet. So there's a possibility, as has been true for a few days, that there may be a new entrance into the field here. I still believe that if it's from the existing field, it's Warsher Besant. And my sources all day continue to be undecided there. Donald Trump generally, when he's been given a group of people and he's got doubts about the entire list, he looks somewhere else. That's how Gaetz got the attorney general thing, because he didn't like his list. Now, it's still possible he'll pick from an existing list, but there's some people close to Trump who are saying to me today, he's had this list for the week. Some have been on for longer than the week. He didn't pick anybody. He's going to want to look elsewhere. That's what some people think. Others say he's going to pick one of those two guys for Treasury, and then we'll see about any National Economic Council. He's also focused a lot on the Fed. I'll tell you that as well. Okay, so that's what's going on there. I'm going to check for some reporting here. Well, I saw a few things come in. Bob Casey has conceded the Senate race in Pennsylvania. He called Dave McCormick to congratulate him. Wasn't much in doubt, but that locks in. There'll be 53 Republican senators. That's one thing here. Okay. Oh, all right. All right. So, going to start taking your questions in a moment. Very grateful to you for joining this evening. We may be joined by a few folks in progress that I'll bring in. But for now, if you've got a question, comment, want to talk about any of these matters or anything else, please raise your hand and we'll get to as many of you as we can. So let's start with Mr. David Brown. David, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Oops, hit the wrong thing there. All right, David Brown. Here we go. I'm doing this wrong again. I don't know why that's not working. All right, David, thank you for your patience. Stand by. I'm going to ask the producers to help me because I'm doing something wrong this evening. Bring myself back. David Brown, unmute. David, thank you for coming. Tell us who you voted for, if you would, where you are, and what's on your mind, please.
Okay, excuse me. I voted against Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was feeling a little bit bitter about voting for Donald Trump in 2020, and then I was comfortable voting for him in this last election, considering all things. I live in Eastern Washington, in a state in Richland, Washington. I live in a blue neighborhood, in a purple city, in a red county, in a red region, which is east of the Cascade Mountains. Of course, the population center is over there in Seattle, so it's a blue state.
We can be frank, there's a bunch of hippies in Seattle.
Well, we have a condo that's not too far from Chop Chaz. And regarding our neighborhood, when General Mattis left the White House, he settled in our neighborhood here.
Yeah.
I think he's moved on because I stopped hearing people saying my friend Jim Mattis this and my friend Jim Mattis that. So I don't hear that anymore. I think it's because he might have moved, but I'm not sure. We moved here in 1986. I lived in Hawaii for 15 years, working for the Navy as a civilian engineer. Met my wife. Our children were all born there. Before that, I went to college in New York City in AOC's district. Before that, though, I graduated in 1967. I graduated from McLean High School in McLean, Virginia, in Fairfax County. Now, if you know McLean, Virginia, you know that on the other side of the railroad tracks from us, and right now it's proverbial railroad tracks, and back in the day it was real railroad tracks, was Hickory Hill, which was the Kennedy family estate over there. And I will recall that when I was in high school, when RFK Jr. was 12 years old, I worked in a shoe store in the Salona Village Shopping Center, and Ethel Kennedy at back to school time would pack all the kids in the, or have the chauffeur pack all the kids in the limousine they come and park.
Dave,
So,
Dave,
yeah.
I'm going to stop you only because I love stories and I loved everything you said.
Okay.
But not everybody's enjoying it, and I
All
have to
right.
take
Okay. I'm
out
sorry. I
all their
apologize.
equity. So
Okay.
no, that's okay. I love it's great history. It's pan-continental and it's interesting stuff. But if you've got a question or comment, I'd like you to get to
the
it.
reason I was getting to that was I was bringing
Yeah.
up RFK Jr. and I wanted to go back
Yeah.
to this morning's conversation that you had with that doctor from New York
Yes, sir.
City. Okay, this is very important to me because
Well, no, he's not from New York City. He lives in Tennessee.
oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. In any event, I am a survivor of Alzheimer's disease. And all of this stuff that RFK Jr. is talking about and that doctor is talking about really resonates with me. I was
Yes, sir.
diagnosed in 2015 at the University of Washington Brain Wellness Center in Seattle, and they followed me ever since. At the time, I couldn't drive a car. I was having trouble remembering my zip code or my phone number after 35 years. I wasn't safe to cross the street. I was in free fall.
Dave, I'm telling you, I love in the story, and I'm so proud of you. And I think there are people on here who are so encouraged. But I'm just going to ask you if you've got a question or a pointed comment about Bobby Kennedy. Love to hear it. But I just can't give you. I can't let you keep going.
Okay, he is absolutely right about metabolic syndrome, chronic disease,
yes,
and
sir.
Alzheimer's disease is type 3 diabetes, and anything you do for join the gym or eat right or all that stuff really, really, really fights Alzheimer's disease. And we're barking up the wrong tree looking for that magic pill.
You're in great shape for somebody who's been diagnosed that way, and it's spectacular. And I'm very grateful for you for coming on. How did you find out about our platform?
I think that the YouTube algorithm noticed that I was someone who liked to hear different opinions about different subjects.
Yep. Fantastic. Again, Dave, really grateful that you joined. I hope you'll come back regularly. Okay. Thank you. Very resonant. Bobby Kennedy, lots of people. And again, I think his endorsement of Trump was a big deal. And you heard just one person along those lines. Quentin, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you voted for president, what's on your mind, please. You're good to go. Quentin, go ahead.
Mark. Oh, thank you. Sorry, my internet froze. From the free state of Florida, voted for Trump.
Yes, sir.
Wanted to say very briefly, I am stunned at the incompetence of the Gaetz pick. How you could not see from a mile away that was a mistake. And the person he reminded me most from Trump's previous orbit was not Bill Barr or Jeff Sessions. It was Michael Cohen. And I don't understand how Trump didn't see that was going to be the least trustworthy member of his cabinet and most likely to turn state's evidence down the road. The Hegseth, I think you're right. He draws the fire now. I don't think he makes it. It's a target the Democrats are gonna knock off. No one will make it. She's a sort of a poor man's Mike Pence. She will get confirmed. She won't help Trump. She'll be ineffective. I want the two that should get through are RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. RFK because Trump campaigned explicitly on putting him in charge. And I think there is a mandate for him. Tulsi Gabbard, Mark, I would just say the risk for the Democrats in going after her, they don't realize it yet, but it's the same risk they realized they were going to face if they went after Amy Coney Barrett. She's really likable. She's a woman. She's smart, and they will look bad if they go after her, because what are they going to say? She's a spy, and it's going to backfire on them. Last thing I'll mention, and this goes along with the Gaetz pick, which I think is a mistake. The one thing the Republicans really had going for them this time was the idea of competency. They were really competent. And my fear is it's a small thing, but the Florida Senate pick cannot go to Lara Trump. It will seem like it is a sort of a family favor for a Trump who's not qualified. And they should be looking at, say, Byron Donalds, who could be the most effective Black Republican voice and a tremendous help to them in the future. That's all I wanted to say, Mark. Appreciate your time.
Okay. You're grateful. I'm grateful to be coming on. That's some good analysis. And a lot of people when Byron Donalds was on two-way were very impressed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw his appearance, but he's
I
an
did.
impressive guy. He's an impressive guy. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Come back regularly. All right. Steve Holder, welcome in. Go ahead,
okay.
sir.
Yep, it took me a second to get to the unmute. I've been following you since I heard about it. I heard about it on Megyn Kelly, and enjoy it. I got a question. You know, we keep talking about what the Democrats need to do going forward, and you know, obviously it makes sense because they're back on their heels and they lost. What do the Republicans do going forward for 2024? You know, obviously the incumbent party usually ends up losing seats and stuff like that. What can they do to prevent that? And then a little bit farther, what do the Republicans do looking forward to 2028?
Well, I think if they pass things that if they propose things that Democrats want to work on, I said earlier, I thought that the reconciliation package, the tax bill, could in fact be something Democrats vote for, some Democrats. And if Donald Trump tries to work with them on immigration or infrastructure or energy or housing, I think he could pass a lot of stuff. The Democrats will tell you, I think they may be right, that the economy may be good. He may be inheriting an economy from Joe Biden that benefits him if he's able to end the two wars, and I think he's got a good chance to do that. The midterms traditionally would be bad, but if the economy's on the move and he's proposed legislation that's gotten Democratic votes, you know, he might be popular. So I think that's what they're thinking. 28, I defy people to say what would happen because we don't know what Donald Trump's attitude is going to be towards building up the Republican Party, towards anointing a successor. If he endorses J.D. Vance and J.D. Vance is seen, excuse me, as the competent vice president, I think he'd be hard to beat. But he's got a lot to prove, folks, because he's not super well known, and I think people will have questions about his being commander in chief. But that's a pretty wide open thing, and I think that again, I said it before. To me, the biggest undercovered story is what is Donald Trump's attitude about how to get Democratic votes, particularly in the Senate. But he could get Democrat votes in the House too, if the tax package is attractive to working class people. And you would think the Republicans would want to do that. Then, would Democrats really not want to be part of a tax bill that's attractive to working class voters?
Assuming that he can, get success going forward, and I'm not sure if he actually can because there's just so much animosity. But what about from a campaign level? Does the Congressional Committee and the Senate Committee for Reelection do to try and forestall losses or even make gains?
Well, leverage the fundraising capacity of the president. The president's party can usually raise more money by leveraging that incumbency. They have the majority in both the House and the Senate. Again, usually you can raise money off of that. And they can support policies that are popular. Really the best way to do well politically is to be for popular things. And maybe run on a good economy. And of course,
that doesn't seem very obvious sometimes.
It's true. It's true. And then of course the mechanical things of building good, infrastructure, recruiting candidates. It's usually either to recruit candidates when you're in the majority than in the minority, and you can help people with fundraising. Barack Obama didn't, many Democrats would say, didn't seem to care much during his 8 years as president of building the party. He cared about building the Obama brand and his political operation for reelection. It'll be interesting to see what Donald Trump, as a lame duck, what his attitude is towards building the Republican Party. Is he going to start spending time doing that? One of the reasons the Republican Party was on its back foot, as the perception was because they have very weak state parties, including the battleground states. Not everywhere, but a lot of places. So is Donald Trump going to tell his RNC chair? Is he going to, whoever that is he going to tell his political operation at the White House, I want my part of my legacy to be a stronger Republican Party? We just don't know the answer to that yet. But if he does, there's a fair amount of power there to try to do that, coupled with potentially a growing economy, potentially a successful bipartisan legislative agenda. And again, he's got to have a bipartisan legislative agenda in the Senate, or the only thing he'll pass is reconciliation, because everything else will take 60 votes. And he doesn't have 60 Republican senators. On the other hand, he could be very partisan and could fight a lot of losing confirmation battles and behave in a way that turns people off and hurt the Republican Party, and they could be shellacked in the midterms. I just don't think we know yet. He hasn't even taken office.
What are your instincts? What do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to be?
Well, I thought he was going to pick responsible people for the government, and he chose a lot of people I think were not. I think I don't know, but I think on the tax bill, I think the clue will be, how do they fashion the tax bill? Do they fashion it in a way to draw Democratic votes or not? Because they don't need to. They could do it as a partisan only affair. But I think that'll be an early clue of how they're approaching this. In addition, how much they listen to Democrats regarding the confirmation process, and then stylistically, how does he treat Democrats during the inauguration? Does he reach out to them? Does he ask them to work with him? We just don't know yet, but he could. And if you're asking me for my gut, I'd say I like to be optimistic. I was wrong about how he would approach the confirmation selection process, although he has picked a lot of people who Democrats are more favorable to, like Marco Rubio. So we'll see. It's too soon for me to say, but I try to be optimistic. So I would hope that he would do, for instance, the tax package in a bipartisan way. I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, thanks for coming. Grateful to you. All right. Eric, come on in. Tell folks where you are, who you supported for president, if they don't know, and what's on your mind, sir.
Hi, I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, California. 3-time Trump voter. I'm glad that the Matt Gaetz thing is resolved itself before we got to confirmation hearings. As an attorney working, I see the issues that could bring, given the politicalization of the DOJ over recent years. Just hoping to see it be brought back, recentered, and just serve the department as it's meant to, which is, focus on the legislation and enforcing the legislation that is passed, upholding the Constitution, and representing the American people as a whole. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of good candidates that could fit that bill, and hoping to see that get going there. From California, it's obviously a very blue state, and we kind of see what happens when there's a one-party control from the top down. And it's frustrating because, speaking with a lot of people, most Americans are, not too far apart on all of the main issues. And it just feels like both parties go towards the extremes of their sides rather than focus on what the everyday person feels. And I just want to get a sense of, will we see one or both parties come back towards the middle in, the next elections?
What do you think the middle in terms of issues? What's the middle?
Willing to work across the aisle more to actually solve problems. I know there's a lot of, you know, a lot of claim from the left that the Republicans were unwilling to address the border, unwilling to work with Biden to address the border, to have it as a campaign issue, which that could be said about any number of issues. The same could be said for abortion in terms of codifying Roe versus Wade at any point in the last 50 years. It could be said for the economy. It could be said for immigration, civil rights. It just feels that both parties don't want to work together for the sake of scoring points for their base.
Yeah. What issues would, if the congressional leadership and the president came to you and said, okay, we'll work together, what are the 3 issues you want Washington to address? What would be at the top of your list?
I think at the top of the list is immigration. I think, obviously, as we saw through the election cycle, is that most people want a secure border. Also, most people believe that the immigration system needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
As it's too difficult for people to immigrate legally. It takes too long. And so there's fixes that can be made. There's a lot of education. I think a lot should be returned to the states, as the education system is too slow to keep up with the growth of technology. In terms of what we're teaching our kids in school, the skills we're providing are outdated by the time they graduate. And it's just, we have such a large country that in order to enable change in how our education system works, it takes too long to make the changes that are necessary in terms of curriculum.
Yeah. And Eric, would you like that? Would you prefer Washington deal with that, Sacramento, or your local community?
I would like the local communities to do it. And it just seems like people are continuously looking up to the states for guidance, and then the states are looking to the federal government for guidance, rather than trying to give more control to the local school boards. And as a parent for 2 young kids who are just now getting into school, it's frustrating. But I know it's incumbent upon us as parents to fill the gaps when needed. But I understand also that a lot of parents aren't able to do so, as we have to work a lot. We have to provide, and time is limited.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, this has been going on now for decades. It's gotten worse. The incentives in the system are geared to listen to the loudest and angriest voices in the party. The special interests, the media, the partisan media, the big money, the negative ads, all of that, call them the 4 plagues, all of that add up to the loudest, angriest voices having the most influence. They don't represent a majority of Congress. They don't represent a majority of their constituents. But if they want to keep their jobs and their access to cable news and post-government positions of book deals, etc., they have to worry about losing primaries in most places more than they do about losing the general election. So there's a number of reforms that people talk about: ranked choice voting, or term limits, or getting campaign, limits on campaign money. I think I've always said it starts with the voters. Most of the people on this platform would rather Matt Gaetz and AOC not have as much power as they do. They'd rather people who are more inclined to compromise and work across the aisle have more power. It's a big group. The people on this platform represent tens of millions of people, way more than the extremes of both parties. So it's just a question of, how do you make your voice heard in a way that allows most of the politicians to do what they want? Most people who get elected to Congress or become governors want to get stuff done. Even Republicans, who tend to believe less in big government, they want to do stuff, and they'd rather do stuff working with all their colleagues. That's the preference of most. So what are the things citizens can do to change the incentive structure? Give money to politicians, volunteer for politicians who support working across the aisle, patronize platforms like this that support bipartisan dialogue, vote for candidates who say they'll work across the aisle, and be outspoken in your communities to say, what can we do? How can we band together to empower the politicians to respond to a different set of incentives? Not special interests, not the extremes, not big money, not negative ads, but other incentives that would allow them to do what you want them to do. It's actually, of all the problems we have on the planet and in the country, it's in some ways the easiest to solve. We just need to have citizens give politicians different incentives than they have now. The loudest, angriest voices are not the most powerful if we outnumber them, if we speak loudly and in unison in a bipartisan way. So that's the answer. Will they do it? Not until the incentives change. It's rational what they're doing now, because the incentives now are to cater to the extremes of your party. Not everybody does it, but most of them do it. And that's the power that we cede to the extremes by not countering the sources of their authority.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Trump saying Pam Bondi.
He's saying Pam Bondi? What do you mean by
Yes, on Truth, he announced her for Attorney
As
General.
Attorney
on
General?
Truth Social. Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right. So for those of you who don't know, Pam Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida. I'm going to resist saying she's Matt Gaetz in a skirt, but she's a lot like Matt Gaetz. She will not be seen as a unifying figure, but she certainly has more experience than Matt Gaetz, and I would be surprised if she doesn't get 50 Republican votes. She's got some controversial views. She's got some controversial background, but by the standards of MAGA, she's a pretty mainstream choice. Who have been women attorney generals besides Janet Reno? Am I forgetting somebody? I don't know that there's ever been
there was a substitute during Trump.
a female attorney
There was
general.
a deputy, yes,
Yes.
a deputy AG.
Who was a woman?
She was in charge for a while.
Who was that? What's her name? It doesn't ring a bell to me.
Stand by.
All right, look that up. But if she's confirmed, I believe she'd be the first Republican female attorney general, which is interesting. And again, she's very media savvy. She's very aggressive. And I'm trying to remember now her relationship with Ron DeSantis. I have to look into that too. We'll learn more about her. My colleagues will come back to us. But that's interesting and very fast. Robert, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Like your sweater and the jaunty way in which you've tied it. Tell folks where you are, who you supported for president. and what's
Still in the
your
Lehigh
life.
Valley, Pennsylvania. I was in
Yes, sir.
in the area. So I have a question. I mean, we just had Bob Casey, thank God, concede the Senate race here in Pennsylvania. The work that was involved with that was incredible by everybody that we were involved with. But my question is a mechanical one. Why isn't the incoming set of senators the ones that are going to decide what the president's nominees are, as opposed to the current set of senators?
It is the incoming ones.
Well, I mean, but Dave McCormick. Well, didn't Dave McCormick have a voice? And I'm just misunderstanding the mechanics.
The new Senate. It's the new
Yeah,
Senate. They're not doing courtesy calls with retiring senators. They're doing ones who are going to come back either because they were reelected or they weren't up. They're just doing them now to get them under their belt so they can do the confirmations quickly.
But we had Susan Wild, who we defeated here, who was on the ethics.
Susan Wild's different. Susan Wild's different because that's the House, and that's an
Right.
ethics investigation from the current Congress. So
Okay.
she won't be back, but the senators do the confirmation, and it'll be the new Senate. But
Okay.
but they're just getting a head start with courtesy calls with either reelected senators or senators who are coming back.
Okay.
All right.
That was my question.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Sally Yates was an acting attorney general, but that was not in Trump, a Republican administration. That was in Obama, I believe. Pretty sure Donald Trump.
For 10 days in 2017.
Oh,
2017.
Oh, right.
She was
Okay,
acting
you're
AG.
right.
Yeah.
You're right. All right. So she was during the transitional period. That's right. But she was a Democrat. She wasn't a Republican. But you're right. It was during that period. All right. We'll continue to monitor this breaking news. But while we wait, Jacqueline, Mary, please come in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, sorry, I got to stop you. I forgot Loretta Lynch also. Again, another Democratic Attorney General,
Okay.
a woman, but sorry,
Um,
go ahead.
So I've been thinking maybe it's paranoid of many people to think that Trump wants to dismantle departments, but a quote came from Jon Stewart recently saying that, and I thought he always thought he was pretty smart. So I was wondering if there's anything to that because he said he wants to trim the civil service. So I don't know how much he would want to cut government. Do you have any
A
idea?
lot. I think Musk and Ramaswamy will propose eliminating a lot of jobs. I think they'll propose moving some jobs out of Washington. I think they'll propose eliminating whole departments. But as we've said before here, the discretionary spending outside the Pentagon and the big three entitlement programs, and if you include, and then if you put in the VA, it's just not a lot of the budget. You could cut the spending in half and it wouldn't be that significant. So those will be symbolic cuts. The reality is there are two ways to think of government employees. One is they're public servants who don't get paid very much and do a lot of work on behalf of the American people. The view of people on the right, not everybody, but many, is they're inefficient and a lot of them are really left wing. And the second part's definitely true, particularly the ones who live in the Washington, D.C. area. They tend to be very liberal. And people on the right have said since Richard Nixon, maybe before, it's not fair that the permanent government is made up of people who overwhelmingly support one party. Now, that's part of why they want to get rid of them, but part of why they want to cut the number. But part of why is they think it's inefficient. They want to move tax money away from government employee spending and government program spending and more towards the private sector. So they can do some things without Congress, but not many. And we'll see if they think they can do any of this in reconciliation or how much of it they think they'll do there. But again, the governor of Virginia is a Republican. We'll see how he feels about cutting government employees in his state. And we'll see also what Republican senators say, whether they support this enough. So it's definitely going to be proposed. I would be surprised if it wasn't the largest proposed spending cuts, domestic discretionary spending cuts in history. I'd be surprised if they were not. But how many of them actually pass, I don't know. I feel confident in saying they will reduce the federal workforce. I think they'll find a way to reduce it. But will they reduce it in a meaningful way? I don't know. I think it'll depend on how well they sell it, how well they research it. Musk and Ramaswamy, whatever else you want to say about them, they're brilliant. And this is what they've chosen to do. They've chosen to take this outside the government position to really study it. And we'll see what they come back with. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. All right, Mark, come on in. Thank you for joining. Tell us. Yes, sir.
Me?
That's you, sir. Where are you?
What?
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, I am, an Australian MAGA. I live in Sydney. I never was into politics until Trump came to the, politics field.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love him so much. Here, like most Australians love him, just except of the government, of course. So yeah, I just have a couple things.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First one is about Matt Gaetz. I believe it was Trump, out of the deal, just to get the others passed. That's just my simple opinion. And just my second thing is regarding to the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune. I think hello.
Go ahead,
Hello?
Mark. What about John Thune?
I think he has a golden opportunity just to to start in a best way, by passing Trump cabinet, because I think he is better than Rick Scott to persuade the establishment senators. So that's why actually I was happy that he got the majority leader. So just I just hope that he can pass his first challenge and then establish the best relationship with the majority of Republican Party. So we will see if he's gonna start in the best way to to start, or the worst way. That probably will be very hard for the Republican to forgive him. If he's gonna fill the cabinet. So just, that's my simple opinion. I'm really, really happy that you called me. I've been following you, it's been, like a couple months, but very, very thankful. And I really like your co-host, Dan and Sean. And, all your, viewers. It's really, an amazing. And again, many, many thanks for calling me.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, how do you follow American politics from Australia? What do you read or listen to besides two-way?
I used to look, to be quite honest with you, because I like, the Republicans. So I used to follow Fox News, but then I stopped doing that because for me, I don't like the double standard either, either right or left, So I started following, kind of, independent, podcast, because I like to see, the both ways. I like, the debate. I like to see, both sides. So I like, some program from here, some program, for example, I watched the CNN night show because it was, kind of it's called Jennings, which is kind of, kind of MAGA. I'm not saying that, but at least, I can see, the both sides. And same as your show, I like, so yeah, I just, I believe in a debate. Show me, all the sides of the story, because people are not stupid, they can think and they can see, which one is right or which one is wrong, and then they can decide, for themselves. Because I believe one of the best sentence, which is only two words, that the normal media underestimated, is the double standard. That's why nobody believes them, because the double standard really pissed off people, like me, and like many other people. So I just hope we can see all the sides, and we are smart, We don't need someone to tell us say this and think like this and vote like this. So yeah, that is again just my simple opinion. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And I agree with you about John Thune has an incredible opportunity. We'll see if he's up to it. I think he's replacing Mitch McConnell, who ended up being disliked by both sides, but was pretty good at his job in terms of understanding his Republican colleagues. And we'll see if John Thune can do that as well. Mark, grateful for you for joining. Please spread the word in Australia. We're underperforming there in the Canberra.
No worries.
We're not doing well in the Canberra market, so see if you can get people there to tune in. Thank you, sir. Grateful to you. Grateful to you for joining. Sorry, cut you off there a little bit. All right. Howard, come on in.
I am from Los Angeles, the Brentwood section, and literally around the corner from the Emhoffs. So
the Harris Emhoffs.
Yes, the Harris and Emhoff family. And I am the rare bird you've been trying to smoke out as the Harris voter, the Democratic Harris voter. But now I would describe myself, as of the other night, as a Richie Torres Democrat.
Pretty impressive guy, right?
Very impressive guy. I wanted to just, being as how I'm rare here, give voice to the despair that I sense and I felt ever since Trump won. And the reason for this is because, I paid attention to what he was saying at the rallies. And he wasn't talking about the economy. He was talking about retribution. And who needs retribution? I don't think basically his base needs retribution. He does. And I understand why, But whenever you talk about Trump in normal terms, like in 2 years, they're going to be the midterms, and in 4 years, he can't run again. I'm heartened because that sounds like normalcy. And one of the reasons we are really exercised about this is I'm afraid that there won't be normalcy. And he's already shown that he's prepared to be quite extreme. Matt Gaetz, okay, there won't be a Matt Gaetz, but as you said, there's going to be a woman Matt Gaetz. And what does that mean?
You'll like her. You'll like her more than you like Matt Gaetz. You won't agree with her.
That
on a lot
won't
of
be
stuff.
hard. That won't be hard at all. But
Howard, go ahead, Howard.
The point is, whatever it is, she's going to do what Trump wants. And one of the things that I'm afraid of is the fact that we do not have an independent judiciary. Right. It's not going to be independent. It's going to be, and Trump has said he's going to go after his enemies. And who are his enemies? Anyone who doesn't like him. And so I believe him when he speaks at his rallies and says he's going to go after them. One last point.
Yeah.
I personally was offended every time he said Democrats are cheaters. The only way I can possibly lose is because Democrats cheat. We all cheat. And that displays a lack of respect and a hatred towards half the country, which I think is very disheartening when you have a president. The president is kind of a parental figure. And when I think that parental figure hates me because I don't like him, I become insecure.
Yeah.
And so
Howard, hold on. I'm grateful to you for coming on. I want to address the things you said, okay?
Sure.
First of all, I'm very glad you're here. And one of the problems we're having is we don't have enough supporters of people who oppose Donald Trump. So I hope those of you who are on, and again, there are many people on here who voted for Kamala Harris and don't support Donald Trump. I hope you'll follow Howard's lead tonight and going forward and raise your hand. On your point about him going after his enemies, of course, it would be extraordinarily unsettling if he used the powers of the presidency to order indictments of people or civil cases brought against people.
Extrajudicial ones.
Extrajudicial. Now, I have a lot of faith that if he does do that, the system, even though there are Trump judges around the country, Trump-nominated judges, I have a lot of faith that the system, even Republicans in Congress, even Trump-appointed nominated judges, I have faith in the system that will not happen in a way that is extrajudicial. I will tell you, Howard, I know you know this, but I want to emphasize it. There are a lot of people on the right who would say, and not just on the right, who would say the prosecutions of Donald Trump by Democratic prosecutors matches that exactly. So that it's already happened in America and it's happened against Donald Trump. Now, some people would also say it's happened against the people who stormed the Capitol. And you and I would say they got what's coming to them based on what they did in cases where the cases were proved. On your second point, let me ask you this, Howard. Why do you think Donald Trump won? Why do you think, given what an awful person you and tens of millions think he is, why do you think, how would you explain his victory?
Unfortunately, I would explain it by we did not have the strongest candidate. And even though she lives around the corner, I will say that.
Yeah.
We all know what we've discussed why she wasn't the strongest candidate.
What Democrat would have beaten Donald Trump?
Richie Torres.
Richie Torres,
but not yet. I'm not quite sure because as we said, the Democratic Party, it's not one party; it's three parties at least.
Yeah.
There are us moderates who want, and then there are people on the extreme left, and people who are more, well, not too many right wingers, but we don't have a cohesive party. And when we're split like that, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to go off and vote for who are some of the other third party candidates.
Yeah.
Right.
Howard, first of all, I don't know if Richie Torres is 35. Maybe I'm being silly. But I'm not sure he's 35. What you didn't mention your governor. Would he not have beaten Donald Trump?
I'm a little wary of him.
Yeah.
One, because he was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle at one point. And another is he appears slick to me. He appears slick to me. And I think that these things matter. Appearances matter. And perceptions matter.
Howard, hold on one second, because I want to add another bespectacled, bearded person of the left, as long as he's got his radio turned down or whatever that is.
All right,
David,
I gotta
David.
jump. I'll get back to you.
All right, David. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt your call, David. David,
Oh.
have you been listening to Howard?
I'm sorry?
Have you been listening to Howard, or you been on your other call?
No, I got a call, but I heard him say something nice about Richie Torres, which is what I wanted to talk about anyway. So can you summarize what his position is?
Well, he doesn't like Trump much, and he thinks Trump won because Kamala Harris, his neighbor, was a bad candidate. And he's more of the center, I think, than you are, since you list yourself as progressive, but maybe not. But David, I'd love to start with you. I don't know what you wanted to ask, but I want to start with you. I'd like to hear your explanation of why Donald Trump won.
Oh, it's, a terrible economic environment, and a really poor candidate, I think, ultimately, with no message, a vapid candidate. Everything you said on the morning meeting, everything everyone said on the morning meeting this morning about how the campaign is beginning to, the backbiting is beginning, and everything that they say about each other basically is true. As you said, she could never really compete on the same playing field, where you have to stand up for yourself and defend your positions, and actually have some solid positions to defend.
Yeah.
I'm in debate though.
There was no offense, really. There was a great defense. Trump was a horrible person, etc. But
yeah,
there was no offense to my way of thinking.
David, tell people who don't know where you live.
I am in Representative Hakeem Jeffries' district over here
Brooklyn, USA.
Deep in Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn, USA.
Brooklyn, USA. Yes.
David, actually, what's on your mind? We're in our waning moments, but Howard and I would love to answer any questions you have.
When I saw Representative Torres last night, you probably know this, but I don't know if everyone knows this, that he is basically public enemy number one to parts of the left, to the what you might call the pro-Palestinian left, or what I would call the anti-genocide left.
Yeah.
Because of his ties to AIPAC, the amount of money he takes from AIPAC, and how much shilling he does for Israel, when in fact he doesn't represent. I don't know if he represents any Jews in his district, really, but anyway,
I'm sure he does. I'm sure there's some Jews in his district.
A handful maybe, but anyway, so I was prejudiced against him, but in the spirit of peace, love, and understanding, I said to myself, let's take a look. Let's examine what his positions are in areas other than Israel and Ukraine, where I disagree with him as vehemently as anyone on the planet at this point. And wow, for someone who's telling the party that we should move to the center, he's like right in line with the Bernie Sanders left. I mean, he's for Medicare for all. According to my minimal research, he's for Medicare for all. He's for green energy. He's for forgiving student debt. He's for raising the minimum wage. I cannot think of, maybe he's not for free public college, but other than that, I can't think of any Bernie Sanders position that Richie Torres does not support. So I have discovered that on domestic issues, Richie Torres is a leftist, and for me, that's a compliment. I know from other people it's an insult, but I
know most of those things to be true. I don't know all of them to be true, but but I think it's a reflection of the fact that the center of gravity of the party has moved towards Bernie in quite a substantial way. So I don't know how many members of the Democratic caucus in the House don't have those positions, but it wouldn't be very many. It wouldn't be very many.
Well,
I think
everyone who's a member of the Progressive Caucus has those positions, and that is a larger group than many
well. But
people.
I think most of what you listed are held well beyond the Progressive Caucus. I will say, though, for instance, he talked about the border. He clearly differs from many members of the caucus on the border in saying the border needs to be shut down. Now, if we're using Bernie as our North Star, and I love Bernie and I respect his movement, Bernie has kind of shifted on the border, right? He originally had more of a populist, almost not fully Trump, but he had a position that the open border was hurting American workers, right? He's shifted a little bit there, but you're right on at least some, and maybe all, I just don't know, of Congressman Torres's positions. But he does have some differences with the left on some of the cultural issues and at least on immigration. But on economics, I don't know. I'd be curious to know how many Democrats in the House aren't for Medicare for all. I think it's definitely a majority, and maybe a substantial majority.
Yeah, well, they favor it, but you know, they never do anything to push it forward when they have control. But anyway,
That's true. David,
I thought
we're
he was-
at
I thought
time.
he
We're
was-
at time. So go ahead.
I thought he was brilliant on immigration, though. What he said basically was that the Biden administration had made all the right moves, and if they'd only done them 3 years earlier and cut down the flows earlier, he struck me as just a really good communicator and really interesting. So
he's a fantastically interesting guy, and I'm really grateful to you for speaking not just in a reasonable way, but in a favorable way about him, even though, as you said, you disagree with him strongly on things like Israel.
I disagree with his idea that the party needs to move rightward.
Yeah, he's from the Liz Cheney wing of the Democratic Party on some foreign bodies. Howard and David.
Can I make a suggestion though?
Yeah, yes, sir. Real quick.
You've had Jordan Peterson and other people from the right. I'd like to see you with some celebrity guests from the left, and I have a suggestion for you.
Yes, sir. Please give it to us. We'd love to do it.
It just occurred to me the other day. Someone who used to be on MSNBC a lot, much like you, and they seem to have banished him. Jeffrey Sachs.
Would love to have Jeff Sachs on. Love Jeff Sachs. Just to be clear, we want everybody. We want voices across the spectrum. I'd love Jeff Sachs to be on. I used to get to talk to Jeff Sachs. We patronize the same local fruit stand. So if I see him there, I'll try to book him. But that's great. Lori, let's try to book Jeff Sachs. David and Howard, you live 3,000 miles apart. I'm not saying the beard and the glasses is everything, but very glad to have you both on. I hope you'll both come back. Please bring your progressive friends, because we want more balance here than we've been getting of late. As I said, there are people on here who never raise their hands. If guys, look how well it went for David and Howard. They got a lot of time. They said reasonable things. They were entertaining, informative. Thank you both for coming. Have a good evening. I'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow with Sean and Dan. We'll all eat crow on Matt Gaetz. We'll know more about Treasury. We'll talk about Pam Bondi. And then tomorrow night, again, special time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. This program, two-way tonight, and amongst our guests will be two great pollsters, Celinda Lake, Ed Goaz, one Democrat and one Republican. Their new poll on the Battleground America, looking at areas of unity, right in line with the ethos of us. So you'll want to be here for that. See you at 9 a.m. Guys, thank you. Thanks everybody who spoke this evening, and very grateful for everybody who raised their hand and was part of it. And we'll see you in a few hours. Good night.